everyone, welcome back to another video. I'm Ray, what Ray reads. Follow me on Instagram and follow me on TikTok because you want to. You do. Come on, come along. If you'd like to support the channel, why don't you just subscribe right now because you do achieve icon status. Thanks for clicking on the video and choosing to spend some time with me as I chat on and on. This week I've decided to do another sort of discussion style video because there's something in the culture, in pop culture at the moment that I think is very important for us to be discussing. And I've had a lot of thoughts floating around in this brain of mine. And I just thought, you know who I want to discuss this with? The friends on YouTube. And the thoughts, the opinions, the musings, if you will, that I've been thinking up have been all to do with the hit Netflix TV series Adolescence. So I'm sure a lot of you are already aware of what the show is. It's a 4-part mini-series on Netflix starring Stephen Graham and a new actor called Owen Cooper, I think. And it's about a family whose life is turned upside down when their 13-year-old son is arrested for murdering one of his classmates. And it's slowly unravelled through the 4 episodes that he's been getting radicalised online on the manosphere. Again, if you're wondering, Rachel, manosphere, I've never heard of that, what is it? Well, according to Wikipedia, the manosphere is a varied collection of websites and blogs and online forums promoting masculinity, misogyny and opposition to feminism. So, you know, all that good stuff. But this TV show has kind of taken on a life of its own and everyone's talking about it. It's all over the internet. It's almost like it's the first show that's tackled this type of subject matter, and I think the reason that the show's been so popular is the nuanced way that it's tackling the subject and topics of masculinity and misogyny, especially amongst young people online and just within current society in general. I personally thought it was excellent and was left in awe. And yes, you were correct in thinking I may be biased as well, because if you didn't know, I'm Scouse. The 2 lead actors are Scouse, and also Stephen Graham. Not only is he a Scouse legend, but he's actually from my hometown in Kirby, so even more iconic. But it's one of those shows that really gets under your skin as a viewer and it really sticks with you, and it's got 99% on Rotten Tomatoes if that's something you care about. But I'd say viewers and critics alike are all sort of enraptured by what it managed to do in such a sort of concise period of time and episodes. So it seems like everyone loves it, but then actually not everyone, because it may come as no surprise to you that the misogynists are hating it.
Well, there it is.
And the nitpicking at things because, you know, apparently women are the sensitive ones. One of the show's creators, Jack Thorne, said that him and Graham decided to make this show because they wanted to, quote, look into the eye of male rage. And I think the show is a great starting point for people who sort of are new to discussing these topics or want it to be a starting point to discuss these topics and issues that are very prevalent in society and online today. And when I finished watching it, it just made me instantly think of this book that I read a few years back now, and that is the 2020 book by Laura Bates, Men Who Hate Women, the extremism nobody's talking about. So as I mentioned, this book was written in 2020 and it goes deeper into the topics and discussions that I had in the show. And in the book, Bates essentially goes undercover online in these forums and sort of manosphere communities that are radicalising young men and boys, and she's trying to sort of get to the root of what the issue is that's sort of enraging them so much or upsets them so much about women having equality or just hating women in general. Discussing the book for NPR, David Futrell writes how Bates explores this online world, saying, Bates is deft in sorting through the angry, hostile and self-pitying rhetoric of the incels, who manages, she notes, to be both victims and purveyors of hate. but she's also expert in taking apart the self-serving nonsense of the seemingly more respectable men's rights movement, which not only does vanishingly little to tackle the many very real issues affecting men today, but actually makes them worse by reinforcing the most toxic and backwards elements of toxic masculinity, all the while promoting this nonsense notion that men, not women, are the truly oppressed gender in the world today. So the book's an unnerving look into these worlds and how it seeps into our everyday lives and communities on a daily basis. And there's a part of the book that really stayed with me, and it's the bit when Laura Bates is talking about going to schools and talking to young kids, specifically young boys, and how female teachers in particular are struggling to control the young boys because they have like no respect for them. And it was very specifically mirrored in the TV show, and I thought they captured that really well, because they're being told online in these communities women aren't to be respected or listened to, so why should we even bother, especially in like an educational setting. And it's all cloaked under the guise of helping them sort of be the best selves. Red flag. From incels, pick-up artists, men going their own way, and opposition to feminist groups, Bates' book digs deep and unearths a lot of the frightening attitudes about masculinity, gender roles and violence. She also believes these attitudes are prevalent in society and they're only getting stronger and gaining power with the influence of social media. And she says that we should really be paying attention to the danger and harm that they are causing young children and women as well. She writes, "In a society in which misogyny and violence against women are so widespread and so normalised, it is difficult for us to consider these things extreme or radical, because they are simply not out of the ordinary. We do not leap to tackle a terrorist threat to women because the reality of women being terrorised, violated and murdered by men is already part of the wallpaper." So I think if you were a fan of the show, you should definitely read this book, and I think everyone should read it. I personally think they should make them read it in schools, but it is a heavy read. It'll leave you shocked and enraged. So all of these sort of things got me thinking up here and reminded me of a joke that does the rounds every now and then within the book community. And the joke is that men don't read female authors and they don't seek out female narratives, characters or stories. And there's another joke, this is very niche, I know, but it's that men only read fiction, and even the fiction's by other men as well. If you go on Booktok or, you know, the book communities on any of the social media apps, you're bound to see something like this.
Why do men refuse to read fun books? Like, anytime I ask a boy what they're reading, it's like The Road Ahead by Bill Gates or Catcher in the Rye or some sort of like, you know, self-help book on time management and productivity. Why are you guys never reading like Fourth Wing or like a Madeline Miller book? Ooh, like, why are you guys against having fun when you read?
I have one question for the guys. Why is it that you lot never read fiction books? Because it's everyday motivation. Rich dad, poor dad. 40 laws of power. Get rich or die trying. Like, it's never a fiction book. Put the motivation books down and the self-help books down and get yourself some empathy. Like, learn to see things from different people's perspectives. Put yourself in someone else's shoes.
And it's a joke that we all laugh about, but I do believe there's some truth to this, and people have written about it and tried to look into it. And I read an article in The Guardian from 2021 titled, "Why do so few men read books by women? No matter if it's Austen or Atwood, the Brontes or Booker winners. Data shows men are reluctant to read women, and this has real world implications." In the article, Mary Ann Steighardt talks about how she was doing research for a book that she was writing, and she commissions the Nielsen Book Research, a leading provider in market research within the book markets, to look into whether men were reading female authors and what the differences were, and if so, why not. Steighardt's suspicions were confirmed when it was revealed that for the top 10 best-selling female authors, only 18% of the readers were men, with 81% being women. Whereas the top 10% of bestseller male authors, it's almost 50-50 or 50-48, something along those lines. Descartes states, in other words, women are prepared to read books by men, but many fewer men are prepared to read books by women. So it makes you wonder, why? Why? Why are you not reading any books by women? Why? You might learn something. You might learn a thing or two. And it also makes you question how it feeds into the attitudes that are so sort of popular and prevalent in society. The lack of respect, equality, etc. We could go on. And is there a pattern here? Does this impact the way men sort of connect to women and female stories in general? And does this bias in any way contribute to understanding women's perspectives on certain things and their experiences? We all know that reading fiction, in particular literary fiction's been proven to increase people's empathy, and it's actually been linked to higher levels of empathy within readers due to the fact that it helps people understand differences and experiences and perspectives. And in 2024, the National Literacy Trust did a survey, and their research team apparently noticed a considerable link between reading for pleasure and empathy. They say of the 64,066 children and young people aged 8 to 18 that responded, nearly 1 in 3 told us that reading helps them understand the views of other people. Similarly, nearly 1 in 3 said that reading helps them learn about other people and cultures. Crucially, 1 in 3 said that something they have read has changed how they think about other people. They also go on to share how these attitudes and views change in regards to gender too. More girls than boys said this. For example, 36.3% of girls said that something they have read has changed how they think about other people, compared with 31.2% of boys. So although this is a small research group in the grand scheme of things, it's a significant one, especially in the age range that it's dealing with, and it shows how important reading and the stories and experiences we teach and share at these impressionable ages for children as they're growing up and developing. And this goes for adults as well. Going back to Steigart's article, she mentions how this ultimately deprives male readers of understanding women and ultimately connecting with them on a deeper level. She says, if men don't read books by and about women, they will fail to understand our psyches and our lived experiences. They'll continue to see the world through an almost entirely male lens, with the male experience as the default, and this narrow focus will affect our relationships with them, as colleagues, as friends and as partners. So if we're to believe that this is the attitude of a lot of male readers, or the majority of them, then it's no surprise that a lot of male writers are also always being torn to shreds online for how they depict and write female characters, from manic pixie dream girls to overly sexualized or characters lacking substance. The majority. We need more of a female gaze now, and yesterday as well. But similar to what I was saying about the jokes within the book community, this is another thing that's joked about a lot, the way female author will write a male character or a female character and vice versa.
I'll wait for you, and I'll try not to age.
My hair is up, so you know I'm a total bitch.
No, it's okay that you broke up with me for no reason. I'm just glad I was able to teach you something about yourself. We're twin assassins. I'm Minora, and I'm Majora. Come on!
My hair is down, so you know I'm fun.
Why are female characters written by men so frequently bad? Short answer is misogyny and the patriarchy and the fact that men have been allowed to be literate and to write for longer. And those men didn't really see women as human beings with complex needs and wants and emotions, feelings, reasonings of their own.
And that circulates a lot in the book community. But part of the reason why reading's so wonderful in the first place is that it allows us to sort of be the eyes within different experiences and learn and grow and connect with characters from all walks of life and from vastly different backgrounds from ourselves, and you're essentially in the point of view of someone else. So it's kind of sad, in all honesty, that people would allow gender to rule their experiences in storytelling and connecting. It's just a sort of limiting way to approach reading and just life in general. Writing for Vox, Constance Grady talks about the viral panic of men not reading women, or just men not reading very much in general as of late. In their article, reading fiction has assumed the same role as therapy in public discourse, something good for one's mental and emotional health that we should all do in order to be better citizens, and something that men, particularly straight men, are simply choosing not to do to the detriment of society. She goes on to say how, yes, some headlines are hyperbolic and everything's kind of blown out of proportion a lot online, but there are some stats to back up what people are discussing and the issues that they're raising, particularly that men are reading less, and they're also reading less fiction, and they just barely read any female authors. Period. But she also digs into the pattern that we're seeing throughout the internet and on social media, or even in political circles and communities, that men can't escape toxic masculinity, and it's sort of overrepresented in men's spaces online. And within that, a lot of the times reading isn't considered masculine.
Dear Lord, what a sad little life.
She writes, Tate and Trump are avatars of the worst possibilities of this internet, the worst version of what its vision of masculinity might look like, prizing instinct over education and action over research. I mean, maybe if Andrew Tate picked up a book, he wouldn't have rocks for brains. Rocks for brains. But all of this is really linking together and showing a pattern of toxic attitudes towards masculinity and what it means to be a man, and how if it's so fragile that like reading is considered not masculine, I think you need to kind of grow up. Go outside with your book, preferably by a woman. And it's sort of demonising people who want to go out and seek different voices and experiences and educate themselves on things that are happening in the world that isn't just from their point of view or echo chamber, and to read something that'll make them feel emotions or just feel deeply. And it all circles around, and it ultimately impacts how men view women and connect with them. I suppose this attitude of men not reading is backed up further with female authors feeling the need to use pseudonyms when writing books in particular genres, specifically thrillers and fantasy. And there's so many authors throughout history that wrote under male pseudonyms. Famously, the Bronte sisters wrote under male pseudonyms, as did Louisa May Alcott, author of Little Women. And why is that? Oh, men don't want to read books written by women. Okay, I'm glad we're on the same page. More recently, the author R.F. Kuang, amazing author by the way, go read Babel, go read Yellowface, who started out writing fantasy books, opted to use a pseudonym. There are a variety of factors and reasons why someone would choose to write under a pseudonym, largely the gender bias within reading and the gender bias during different time periods throughout history where, you know, women weren't really taken seriously as writers, and people probably wouldn't even read the work if it was known to be written by a woman. Writing about this for Stylist, Francesca Brown spoke to numerous authors who chose or were advised to write under pseudonyms when publishing the book, and one author said she was informed that while my books would appeal to men, they wouldn't buy thriller books written by women. This author also went on to say that it wasn't really an issue in Europe, but it was very much an issue in the US and the UK. And Brown also goes on to say that although men are less likely to read books by women in general, we do often have an unconscious bias towards our own gender when picking what we want to read. She says at least one survey indicates that we actually gravitate towards books written by our own gender. A 2014 survey by book review website Goodreads found that male authors accounted for 90% of the 50 titles most read by men on the site, but the stats for women were exactly the same. Of the 50 books most read by women, 45 were of female authorship, with only 5 written by men. I mean, this raises an interesting point, but I will also say that statistic was from 10 years ago. And I don't know about you, but I've seen some seriously problematic changes in attitudes since then. And we can kind of see through society and on social media how men's attitudes have changed even more since then. And according to research conducted by the Women's Prize in 2023, gender bias is still very prevalent in men's reading habits. They write, the research confirms that while women read books by women and men equally, men overwhelmingly reject books written by women in favour of male authors. I know we all have our biases. I'll hold my hands up. I love female-driven narratives, but the gender of a book would never stop me from reading it. The gender of the author of the book, if the story sounded really great and I found I was drawn to it, it wouldn't stop me reading it based on the gender. But that can't be said for everyone. Writing for LitHub, Marianne Steigart writes of the implications of these biases, especially from men. All of us, to a greater or lesser extent, and often without realising it, tend to expect less of women, listen to them less attentively, and feel uncomfortable with them in positions of authority. But there are men who do not expose themselves to women's voices in the first place, across cultural spectrum, whether the women are on social media, writing books or appearing in films. If these men are not listening to, reading or watching women, how can they afford them any authority at all? How do they even know if the women are any good? So this is just sort of an interesting discussion I wanted to have, and it made me think, what does all this mean in the grand scheme of things? How does choosing not to read books from the point of view of women impact male readers' views of women? Does this stop them empathising with women on a deeper level or understanding them? We all know that a lot of the time men only seem to connect with the plight of women when they see it through the eyes of their partner, the wife, the sister or the daughter or children. But what about women who you don't know in close relation? I think it's so important that Adolescence is raising these types of discussions for us to be having in culture and society, and I think the impact of the show's proven that people want to have these discussions and they want things to change. When I was doing the research for this video and looking up articles, it was so obvious that there's a thread that's woven through all of these societal attitudes, particularly pertaining to media and literature, from patriarchy to how boys are socialised differently to girls, some men's attitudes towards women, to the reading habits, something as simple as the reading habits, and even the connection to understanding or wanting to understand women, because they're never going to want to if they don't respect them. Plus, all of this is sort of covered as well with the pressure and the societal expectations of masculinity. There's definitely a thread through all of this, and it's also important for me to mention that these figureheads of the manosphere who are spreading hate and deterring young boys away from emotion, empathy, education, so they can indoctrinate them essentially into their way of thinking, is something we all need to be wary of and sort of speak on when we notice it and push back against it. And the first thing we can do is educate ourselves by making sure we're reading vastly stories from different points of view and reading broadly. As Laura Bates says, it is not women or even feminists who have limited, frustrated, diminished, hurt and damaged men, but masculinity itself, or rather our society's constricting, toxic, self-defeating version of what it means to perform being a man. Oh, and before you start crying, I know, not all men. If you need someone to reiterate not all men when discussing these types of topics, I think you need to do some self-reflection, babes. Okay, so yeah, this was just something I wanted to sort of discuss while it was out there and everyone was kind of discussing it, and it was sort of in the culture, prominent at this very moment. So I hope you thought there was something interesting there, and let me know if you think there is a connection and if you see the attitude being connected to different sort of aspects of art, culture, media, social media. And I felt very moved to sort of do a video about it, and if I can recommend a book in all of this, then it's a win. Let me know your thoughts in the comments and keep the discussion going. Do you feel like you have a gender bias when you're reading? Did you watch the show? Did you like it? So yeah, that's the video for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to support the channel, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe because it really helps me out. You can also support me here. I appreciate you all. Thanks for watching. Thanks for spending time with me, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.